Hi, it's Audrey Gruber, head of video here at dailymail.com with the Facebook Live today off the elections, or primaries rather, last night. We're going to talk a little politics with John Opdycke from Open Primaries, which is a nonprofit in the U.S. that works on opening the political system up, and we'll discuss a little bit more about that with him. But let's first talk about what happened last night, because there was a little bit of concern. California is an open primary state. And first, let's discuss what an open primary is.
Well, there's different flavors of an open primary, but broadly speaking, without becoming a nerd, an open primary is a primary that allows everybody to participate, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent voter.
So if I am a Republican, I could have voted yesterday in the California primary.
No, I mean, you could have voted in the Republican primary, which wasn't really a primary because the contest had already been decided. You couldn't vote in the Democratic primary. But if you're an independent, you could have voted in the Democratic primary, but you weren't eligible to vote in the Republican primary. And if you're a Democrat, you could have only voted in the Democratic primary. And if you're a member of a third party, you couldn't vote at all. So it's a crazy situation in which the primary rules are different in every state. And in some states, independents can vote. In other states, they can't. In some states, there's no party registration at all. In other states, there is. And part of what we're seeing is that, for the first time in a long time, people are starting to pay attention to the rules of the primaries and realize how unfair they are, stupid they are, anachronistic, outdated, and need to be changed and opened up. And we need a much more modern construct that gives people more voting rights.
Now, if I'm not an American and I'm watching this in London or I'm watching this in Australia, part of our global audience, this sounds baffling as far as an electoral process. How did we get to this point?
Well, it's a long history. I think the fundamental political dynamic is that we have a political system that's a nonpartisan system. It's not a parliamentary system where people vote for a party. There's no mention of political parties at all in the U.S. Constitution. But we've designed an election system that gives the parties complete control over this first stage of the process. So there's a real conflict in the architecture and the actuality of the American political system, and we're seeing a lot of friction in that. Because Americans, right now, 43% of all Americans consider themselves to be independent voters. They don't want to be in any political party. And yet the system is set up so that the political parties get to determine the rules of participation. And people are really chafing at that.
And now, is this what we should blame for the rise of this current two contenders going on, which there seems to be a lot of dissatisfaction going on about?
I don't know if it's a one-to-one cause. I think that there's what I see are two interrelated trends in the U.S. One is that there is a deep, deep anger and frustration at a government and a set of government institutions that are completely gridlocked, don't work, are inept, and don't respond to the needs and dreams and goals of the American people. You see Washington and Congress having an approval rating that's lower than head lice and cockroaches. And at the same time, 43% of Americans don't want to be part of any political party. People see the political parties as part of the problem, not part of the solution. And so there's a lot of efforts by voters with the limited tools that they have to make a statement that they want not just to elect a new president, elect a new senator, elect a new congressperson. They actually want to change how we elect people in this country, because how we elect people is directly contributing to the kind of political dysfunction, gridlock, negativity in Washington and in state capitals. And people are starting to pay attention to that, which is really exciting.
Well, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comment section and we'll take them. Let's talk about what happened last night. Hillary won her primary and Bernie lost. It was a clear win, yet he's going to keep going. What is the point in the election system here to keep going at this point when he doesn't have enough delegates?
Well, I don't want to speak for Bernie Sanders. I'm sure he and his team, and they're talking all kinds of different strategies about what they want to do with regards to the vice president, with the party platform. I think something very interesting, which we're focused on, is that the Democrats and Republicans are having their conventions this summer. And one of the issues that's going to be on the table is the rules for the 2020 presidential primary. And the Rules Committee could enact a new rule which says that the primary should be open in all 50 states. And that's something that we're circulating a petition for. And Bernie Sanders is very supportive of that. So we're trying to recruit him to play an active role in pushing for an open primary in 2020.
So you think this is for Bernie an opportunity for him to have a bigger platform at the convention, and he's just playing politics to get there?
I don't know. I mean, the primary just happened last night. I think he and his team are developing what they want to focus on. I think that, here's the traditional script. The loser in the primary, what they fight for is some kind of speaking role. They fight for a change in the party platform, which everybody knows the party platform is meaningless. It's just a piece of paper that doesn't really, impact on actual life. For the first time since the 80s, when the whole superdelegates were created in response to grassroots pressures, Jesse Jackson's campaign and so forth, for the first time, the issue of open versus closed primaries is going to be hotly contested at the convention. And my hope is that Bernie Sanders and his delegates really fight not for a symbolic change to the platform on this issue or that issue, but they really fight for open primaries in 2020. That would be a big development.
And let's talk a little bit about Trump and the rise of Trump and the party. Before, he was given a lot of media time.
Yeah.
And it's sort of nobody thought he was going to rise. What do you think the rise of Trump says about the Republican Party and where we are now in our party system?
Well, I think that what it says about the Republican Party is that there's a lot of people in this country that are interested in blowing up the Republican Party, that see it as having played a very divisive and negative role. And Donald Trump tapped into an anti-party sentiment. Say what you want about him, and I disagree with practically everything that comes out of his mouth, but he is projecting a certain kind of political incorrectness and an anti-party statement. He's saying, look, this party is hypocritical, doesn't do what it says it believes in, it manipulates and lies to people, and I don't need it and I don't want it. And a lot of people responded to that message.
But yet he's on the ticket for the main party. You don't see him on the independent party or looking to open up the primary system. So how much of it do you see as a ruse in him not really grabbing onto the real issues that's behind what he's saying?
Oh, I mean, it's very complicated. I think there are many people, there was a whole segment on the news this morning about this, how the Republican establishment is in some ways looking to kind of, McConnell said it, Senator McConnell said it great, get him on script, turn him into a traditional Republican. I don't know if you can do that with Donald Trump. The guy's kind of like a time bomb. And I don't know if you can get him on script to be a traditional Republican. That's not what his appeal has been, certainly. But I think that we've lived through years and years and years of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party just flat out lying and manipulating to the American people. And this is one of the consequences of it.
I mean, I could just see our global audience going, well, how are you guys going to get out of this one? And your solution to get out of this one is to change the system. But you said it's not a put it on the ballot in a national ballot. It's a state-by-state issue.
It's complicated, yes, because election law is a state issue. We're pursuing legal fights, legislative fights, ballot referendums, grassroots organizing around the country. The thing we're focused on right now is getting 1 million signatures on a petition to urge the Democratic and the Republican parties to enact rules changes. That's where they could do it at the national level. The parties themselves could enact a rules change that says 50 states open primaries in 2020.
But what's the benefit for them to do that? You're asking a party to get rid of some of their power to open it up to everybody else.
Well, if they're smart, I mean, look, I don't expect them to, embrace this. That's why we need to get 1 million signatures, so they recognize there's some force behind it. But if the parties are smart, they're going to say the world is changing. 50% of young people, millennials, are independent. They don't want to be in a political party. If they want to be relevant 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they better adopt to the changing political attitudes of the American people. Otherwise, they're going to go the way of the Whig Party and be irrelevant, which, you know, speaking personally, I wouldn't mind. But we want to take advantage of the fact that the parties are weak and unpopular with the American people to push them to take a more democratic standpoint. Others, Ted Cruz, for example, is leading a campaign within the Republican Party to enact closed primaries in all 50 states. Yeah.
Wait, that doesn't, I don't think I've heard about why.
Well, his belief is that when you close the system, when you get rid of independent voters, when you conduct primaries among only party activists, that a traditional kind of conservatism that is very oriented around a specific brand of conservatism, his brand, can do better and do well. So this issue of the rules is really important. There's a lot of people looking at the rules of the game because it has such a big impact on the outcome.
But again, I'm thinking that this is a democratic party. We're a democratic country. And yet it sounds like we're being told by two different parties which way to think.
Yeah, it's not right. And in fact, the long-term solution is that we need public primaries in this country. By that I mean primaries that are not run by the parties for the purpose of selecting a party nominee, but they're run by the people for the purpose of selecting the two most popular candidates to go to the general election. The party's internal business should not be funded by the taxpayers and shouldn't be run by the government. And that's part of the conflict that we have right now.
All right, Ash had a question out there.
Chris Hughes says, it's back to the lesser of two evils scenario, and Oleg, it feels like Americans don't have a choice anymore. Is there somewhere that all these people can go and look for a full list of independent candidates, or is it just that you have to surf online and kind of hope you stumble across one?
You have to surf online. Obviously, there's two independents running for president, Jill Stein of the Green Party and Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party. I think both of them are hoping to make inroads. Johnson, in particular, is focused on getting in the presidential debates, which is another whole rigged scheme where the parties themselves run the presidential debates. It's a complete conflict of interest. I think it would be a big development if one or more third-party candidates was in the presidential debates this year, but that's a huge uphill battle, and we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
It's not looking very good for us here, but people could go to your organization and see a petition. It's openprimaries.org.
Yes.
You've got a Twitter page, which we'll put down in the comments below if people are interested as well. And people need to just stay tuned and be vocal here.
Yeah, and changing the primary system, it might sound like, oh my God, complete wonky, nerdy, technical changes. It's nothing like that at all. If we change the primary system to give more power to the voters and less power to the parties themselves, it opens up the possibility, not the guarantee, but the possibility of new coalitions, new candidacies, new ideas being able to refresh the American political scene, which is incredibly stale, incredibly closed down, incredibly partisan. And you've seen in this presidential election that the American people are so hungry for new ways of doing politics, for new voices, for new conversations. People are literally desperate for that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Petition, openprimaries.org. It's a really important petition, and we want to get 1 million signatures on it.
Openprimaries.org. Thank you for joining us and talking a little bit about the election process here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Tune in a little later today for London will be taking over Facebook Live next. See you later.